Someone once said everyone sees the world in a different way, so when someone dies, it is, in a way, the death of an entire world. So, Reddit. What unique world will die with you? I do a lot of tabletop DMing for other nerds, so a lot of worlds will die alongside me. Nobody will miss that one time that we played a game set in New Jersey, but slightly more people than usual were goblins. Same, lots of DD worlds I barely have anything written down. Luckily, one of my players is extraordinarily careful about noting and organizing stuff I babble about for hours unending. He probably knows more about my overcomplicated plot and legion of random characters that somehow become very important to it than I do, and I love him for it. Wouldn't be half the DM without his watchful eye and ever-consuming thirst for fantasy worlds with dragons to stick in portable holes and snakes to throw at chasing blind monks. Could you Eli 5 a gist of the game? I sort of know the premise, like there is a DM who is following a story and is sort of a narrator. But how open is it? From what I have seen from media, there are weapons and shit and character stuff. How do you know about any of the spells, weapons or stuff like that, and can the DM straight up make everything up? Is the DM always the DM? Is it a set role or does everyone do it? Hey Op, I don't have a good answer for this, but I like the question. Just thought you should know. I think my experience will die off. Of course you try to give a lot to your kids, but they will process it in their own way. Also stories. For me, I have a huge load of stories I was a part of, but also stories that live inside my head. Occasionally I scribble down some ideas, but I never get to completing it. And that makes me wonder, what other stories, real and made up, did there live inside the heads of others? My parents? My grandparents? The old people I ran into when I was young? People in the trains used to be filled with stories of the war, World War II, because they talked about it. Should I have paid more attention? Should I have written them down? Should I still do that? You should definitely keep up the writing. A lot of people want to write but don't know what about, so you have a head start there. Thanks for the encouragement. It takes so much time though to do it seriously. Time I don't have right now. I've just started seriously writing again and I'm taking the Hemingway approach, 500 words a day, no more, no less. Don't beat yourself up if you miss a day though. In a few months you'll have written a lot. I've read a tweet from someone that did something kinda similar and kinda different. Her goal was 200 words a day, I believe. The idea is to have a low threshold so that you actually start writing every day, even when you don't have much time. Once you've started your writing session, chances are you'll find a good flow and find a way to make time so you can continue. There might be flowers that only you or I have looked at in detail. When we leave, maybe that flower will leave with us. In return, I'd like to get better at painting and recreate the ones that stuck with me, so they can stay smile. I love the natural world, and I think of this often. Every tree, plant, blade of grass, and flower contain their own tiny world, full of insects and fungi and pollen. Sometimes I wonder what history an old tree has lived through, how many people have touched its bark or sat in its shade. I wonder how many people smell a flower before it withers, or brush against it and carry some of its pollen home with them. It's all separate and somehow also all the same. I do this, but with abandoned buildings more often than the natural world. Entire lives happened in there, and for at least one person, that building may have been the most important location in their life. I have the same feeling. I always thought old or abandoned houses were beautiful. Someone's entire childhood, emotions, shelter, memories, all took place there. I feel the same about old cars. All they have been through, who they sheltered and moved, and so on. The same could be said for old shoes. To think of how far they took their owner before being thrown away, especially when you see really old, tattered shoes. I've never thought about most of these things. Interesting stuff. You'll see the world a bit differently now. Honestly, clothes as well. Some's childhood of driving at night, the drip of chocolate ice cream on their pants while laughing with their siblings. The dirt's damage, the tears and stretches it's been through. I really like this kind of stuff. My world is made up of the people around me, my loved ones. So when I die, a part of my world will live on through them. My dad had lots of stories he told me when he was a boy, so his world still lives in me, even though he died 12 years ago. I've told some of these stories, and even posted them on Reddit. If someone read them, and they resonated with people, then that world may still exist after I'm gone. Ubuntu. I had no idea Ubuntu was a real word, Always think of the Linux distro. It's actually a philosophical term in African culture, mainly from the Zulu language, which means I am, because you are. What an awesome word. It's a shame most of us only know about Linux part. It's a shame we don't know the actual meaning of the word true. But can we just appreciate how an amazingly appropriate word it is for a Linux distribution? Ah, nice. I didn't make the connection. Creative mofos. The worlds I built in my mind. The stories that I worked on, fleshed out and grew with me. Being an adult takes up most of my time these days, but I still go back to my beautiful made-up worlds and stories when I can. These. The little fantasies and headcanons you write but never wrote down will go with you. I think that's okay. The kids have their own little stories to dream too. The world of my search history. And all my cells. Ha 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 ha. You wish your search history would disappear with your death. Nope. Mine disappears after I exit the program. That's what they want you to think, smile. Well, either way, it isn't where the curious Georges would find it. Whoa. Exactly. The entire world, if I die, I am taking you all with me. Not if I take you. I have fought to carry the surname of my Jewish family that was murdered in the Holocaust. They were all killed and the name gone extinct. I am carrying that name and all that it means to me. The freedom to be and the heroism with which my great-grandmother survived. If I die now, I will not have been able to pass the name along, so I hope life gives me time and children to continue this legacy. Tell us the story of your great-grandmother. She sounds like an incredible person and I'd love to hear it. She was very lucky through her unluck. She was only 3 years old when her, probably not Jewish, mother died. Her Jewish father committed suicide on her 18th birthday. Due to her part and complete orphanage, she grew up with non-Jewish foster families. She knew she was of Jewish descent, but not Hasidic. She married a Protestant man on her 25th and therefore was no longer known under her Jewish maiden name. How much contact she had with her Jewish family after the death of her parents, I do not know. When the Nazis occupied the Netherlands, she reinvented her life story and removed all Jewish elements from it. Her parents? No idea, they were dead. She was a good Protestant wife with a beautiful child. Her Jewish maiden name, no, that's not Jewish, that's a Dutchification of a French name, see, we are descended from the Huguenots, a good Protestant lineage. Etc. That aunt who fled a camp and came knocking at her door for aid. Never heard of her, she was never here. It worked, whereas everyone else was sent to Sobibor, she wasn't. And I mean everyone, the babies and elderly alike. Murdered in their first hours of arrival. The unlucky youth made sure she survived. My grandmother never knew she was of Jewish descent until my father started his genealogy hobby that we discovered it. In hindsight, my grandmother looks almost stereotypically Jewish. It's funny we never thought of it before. Her story lives on through here now too. A world where all my jewelry art pieces have stories to tell about what they're made of, how they were made, who made them, and how they ended up with me. And surely there's a ukulele or two in there somewhere too. Oh yes, 3 or 4. Smile. The memories of my sons when they were little bitty boys and I took them to the park in big jackets and they ran through the leaves. After reading some depressing comments, this one made me smile. Who said this? Such a beautiful thought. It's from the Talmud. It was also quoted towards the end of Schindler's List. Nothing of value, I assure you. Same here, I assure you. I am a firm believer that you decide your own fate and there is no such thing as pre-written fate. Every time you take a single action, you are creating a fate out of those millions of possible options. There is this quote that says it's crazy how day by day nothing changes, but when you look back it's different. Every time you choose to do something, you are unknowingly writing your fate. It'll be this world that dies with me.